Hello, my dears. Now, we proceed to the seventh part uh, of these little tiny talks. Not so much TED as a TEDette. Ed, rather than TED. So where we were at the end of 6, as far as I can remember, is we'd spent 5 and 6 contemplating the question of the meaning of drama as exposed by a sense of, if you have a story, how do you tell it? Where do you begin? What do you supply if it is to be told in the theatre? Now, I have a strange light across my face. Oh, the bar. The bar has gone. I was going to use it. Never mind. It's probably, there it is, it's coming back. The sun is bringing it back. So we were exploring that darkness of how to proceed, where now. The difference between what I personally, as a playwright on the occasion that I'm describing, was struggling with, and the great playwrights who have taken stories and told them in their uniquely powerful way, is that they all had a story to tell, and the question was, where do we begin it? I had nothing but the beginning. I had a midget in a catsuit reciting Spinoza. So I had no problem putting the opening moment onto the stage. I needed light, I needed a body, I needed a voice, and the title itself announced that somebody, this midget, was reciting Spinoza. And so I had the task of somewhat explaining the title, beginning to explain the title, by which, as the playwright, I'm assuming that my audience, without whom none of this can take place, are mystified and awaiting clarification. It comes in the form that I've already described. You discover that inside the catsuit is a man called Sir Arthur Midget, a professional philosopher who lectures on Spinoza, and also, in his spare time, every winter plays the cat in the pantomime of Dick Whittington and his miraculous cat. It's become a tradition, and to that we must return, but that much must be established before we suddenly and alarmingly move on by having Sir Arthur remove his catsuit and turn out to be not Sir Arthur at all, but somebody quite different, sitting opposite a man who has walked onto the stage in a white suit, in a white military suit, and sat down on a stool, and the bars across his face, to which I was going to liken mine when we began, the bars implying bars between him and the English soldier, who is also sitting on a stool. And so their discussion begins, and it turns out that the man in white is Hermann Goering, Field Marshal Hermann Goering, who is next in line to Hitler. And he is in jail at the Nuremberg trials, and he is awaiting what he fears will be a death sentence. By an irony, I think, largely unconnected with this development in the play, the fact is that my own uncle, not an uncle by blood, but an uncle by marriage, my father's younger sister, married a young lawyer, and this young lawyer, Sir David Maxwell Fyfe, was one of the prosecution team at the Nuremberg rally, and he broke Goering on the stand, destroyed his claims to innocence. So strangely, Goering is in my family. But that is not needed for this play, and it's not needed for me to have that to hand to think, where shall I go next? Shall I reach into my family album? No. No, the reason I went here, I think my imagination took me here, very much to my own surprise, jumping from off stage at a pantomime in the 1930s to 1945 in a jail cell containing the infamous Hermann Goering. What led me here was the fact that I had a title. I was given this like a clue in a treasure hunt. Midget in a catsuit reciting Spinoza. This immediately reminded me of something. So I had another clue on my way forwards. It reminded me of the first Salvador Dali title, a painting title, that I was so struck by that it was the first one that I memorized. And it was a portrait of, I didn't memorize it very well, a dead horse. It's a portrait, no, it's I have it now. It's debris of an automobile giving birth to a blind horse biting a telephone. Now, you may claim that that's so much more elaborate than Midget in a Catsuit reciting Spinoza, that the one does not necessarily evoke the other, but I don't agree. I think my midget reciting Spinoza is quite as bizarre, a little modest perhaps, compared to debris of an automobile giving birth to a blind horse biting a telephone. Because I think it's easy to see how the debris of an automobile title would be a man, a painter, looking at his work and thinking, well, that was a sort of improv. What the hell is it? And it looks a little like a smashed up automobile, that emerging from it is this horse, this horse blind, can't see where it's going, and it's biting. What is it biting? Looks like a bit like a telephone. So the thing about both titles is that they describe implausible activities, and the biting and the reciting somehow echo each other. So somehow I was carried towards Salvador Dali, who eventually became a major character in the midget play. But first we had to go to Goering, who is trying to bribe his jailer to get hold of some rope, a pill, something, so that he can cheat the hangman, do it himself. And the jailer says, well, maybe I could get something for you, but what do I get in return? And they go through various options, and eventually the jailer says, I understand that you, Herr Goering, are quite a collector of art. How about you find a painting for me? That would encourage me. So they go through various painters whose great works Goering has shamelessly stolen across Europe in the course of his Nazi career, and finally he comes out, and the jailer doesn't want anything. This is Renoir. Nah, not Renoir. That's kitsch. And finally, Goering says, well, how about Salvador Dali? Oh, yes, he's a great draftsman, says the wise jailer, for so he was. And Goering says, well, as it happens, I have a painting that Goering painted specially for me. What's it called, then? Well, of course, it's called Midget in a Catsuit Reciting Spinoza. And that's the painting that Goering sells to his jailer to get the pill that kills him the night before his sentencing. And so the painting enters the play, and the play is reborn as itself within the play that is its own title. And I happen to be married to a great painter. My wife is truly a great painter. And I asked her if she would paint a Dali, a faux Dali with the title Midget in a Catsuit, reciting Spinoza, which she did, which enabled the painting itself to enter the play. And here I'm just having fun, of course. But in replicating the title, I'm also exploring its mystery and seeing where it takes us. In fact, it takes us to Salvador Dali as we go back in time to the earlier period when Hermann Goering was at his height and was a friend of Dali's. I think I invented that, but it's curiously plausible. And of course to Hitler himself, who turns out to be played by the same actor who plays Dali, and they have, as it were, a duel of mustaches, both claiming to have the most illustrious mustache in the world. Dali's famously turned up, Hitler's stuck famously under his nose and ventured no further into the world. So, abandoning my trying to penetrate the darkness of theatricality, let's go back to the great playwrights and see what they did. They had a story to tell, and as I described in my, I think, 2 previous videos, the genius of their author, of the dramatist, was not to start at the height of the drama, to start instead in medias res, as people like to say, in the midst of things, but not at the apex of things. So began a tradition from the very beginning of starting small. In the case of the Agamemnon, starting almost comedically small. And maybe, as I ventured, this was not just the genius of the dramatists, the early dramatists, bequeathing to later dramatists this idea, but also bequeathing a sense of the practicality of not starting at the very apex of your play before people have settled down. Let them get the wavelength. Let them listen. In the case of Shakespearean drama, let them stop throwing oranges at each other and running each other through with their swords. Let them settle down. So this is where they were in, as it were, the darkness of their invention. The important thing in that darkness to which we must come is the audience. And I think of the things that can be done without the proximity, the real physical proximity of an audience. Film ensures us of that. This medium that I'm using now ensures us of that. I don't have to be there in front of you. In so many forms of artistic communication, 2 bodies present to each other are not necessary. But what is it that is conjured by the presence of bodies? One of my daughters is a psychotherapist, a psychoanalyst. Currently, because at this moment, COVID-19 rules the land and proximity is forbidden, she, of course, supplies her therapy on Zoom. Her patients are present to her on a screen, she to them. But what is lost? So much, indescribably much. And yet, technology and the great strides created during the Enlightenment have brought us, amongst other things, pseudo-presence. And so we need to go back and consider how essential an audience is, that they are one of the chief building blocks, if not maybe the chief, the second most important thing. Something has to be happening and spoken and described and acted out on stage, but also there has to be somebody to hear it. And so I think I'm going to conclude right here, a few seconds, 30 seconds short of my mark, because I want to come back to this issue of presence, what it signifies, what it supplies, that communication as such cannot supply. You can communicate. I am here seeking to communicate to you what I've learned about the pith and essence of theatre. And I am speaking the words, but I'm not there with you. If I were there with you, I could be the veteran, the survivor, the man who has fought in the war, and brought myself back for your inspection, for the effect of our proximity. And that's something that needs to be explored because it was, of course, of the essence of the history and the birth of drama. Thank you for your patience.